Music Sound Influence.
What's up, everybody? I'm back for another album review, and for today, I'm going to be talking about the highly anticipated new album from Brandy entitled B7. So let's get into it. So it has been 8 years since Brandy released the album entitled 211, and that was one of my favorite albums of 2012 and one of my favorite albums of the decade. It was an amazing R&B record with beautiful vocals, nice instrumentation, and very well done lyrics. And I really enjoyed that record. And we get to this record, which is entitled B7, and I will say this is her most personal, reflective, transparent, and vulnerable album out of her whole discography. You definitely hear throughout this entire album, she's talking about herself and things that she's went through throughout her life and her whole career, and she gets very personal on a lot of these different tracks throughout the entire album. On the track Bye Bipolar, which is the last track, she talks about mental health. Throughout the entire album, she talks about self love, discovering herself. She talks about love. And it's just on this album, she really, talked about different things throughout her life, especially on the track Saving All My Love, on the track Lucid Dreams and Borderline. Like I said, like my favorites, like those are some of my favorites of the entire album. I want to be talking about each of the tracks, and then I'm going to be giving my final thoughts at the very end of the entire album and my overall rating of the album. So let's get into it. So on the track Saving All My Love, which is one of my favorites, I like the piano in the background and the keyboard synths that accompany the bass that's in the background that ties the track together with the thumping drum beat. It was one of my favorites off this album. And like I said, on this track, she is getting very personal and reflective of her own life. And she's talking about um, her time away from music. And she's just talking about her life and the different things that have happened throughout her life. Then we get to the next track, which is entitled Unconditional Oceans. I love the moving synths with the shifting beat and the piano that comes into play. I really like this track. And on this track, she's talking about love and talking about she wants this type of unconditional love. Like I said, it's one of my favorites off the album. Then we go to Rather Be, which was released as one of the singles exclusively for iTunes. And this is one of my favorites. I love how the last track and this track flowed into each other. That's one of the things that I also notice about this record is that a lot of the tracks, they flow very well together into the next track. Just really well done in terms of cohesion and production quality for the entire record. Then, like I said, for this track, I like the dark mid tempo bass synths that come in and out, and the beat that switches to this drum and low bass towards the end, and then has these spacey synths that in the track. I really enjoyed this, and I love the vocal layering on this song. Amazing vocal layering, and that's another thing that you will definitely hear throughout this entire record is the vocal layering and attention to detail in terms of vocals is incredible throughout this entire record, and that's something that Brandy has mastered throughout all her records. And especially, you hear the different ways that she approaches her vocals with each record. Everything from the first album, Brandy, all the way up until the album that we are here to talk about today. So she has mastered that incredibly. And then we go to the next track, which is All My Life Part 1, which is an interlude. It kind of has this spacey sound to it with these wiry synths. And throughout this entire album, there is All My Life Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3, which is kind of giving homage to her first album, which had the I Dedicated Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3. And just I like how this track flows into the next track, which is called Lucid Dreams. Which Lucid Dreams, it has these water sounds and snaps that come together. It sounds very tranquil and soothing when you listen to it. And of course, I love the high notes that she brings into this record. That's another thing that I noticed on this record is that you definitely hear her vocal range get wider on this record compared to her previous records. You definitely hear her going up a little bit more and more on this record. And I love the bass that comes in and the piano and synths that come into the background to tie in this track. I really enjoyed this track. And like I said, this is another track where she's talking about herself and talking about different things throughout her life. And it's just one of my favorites. Then we go to Borderline. Like I said, Borderline was one of the more personal records off the album. And on this track, I love the piano that comes into the track. I love the bass guitar that comes in to join the beat, and then the beat changes with this bright spacey synths that have this pulsating bass and chimes that come into play, and the stuttering beat. It's another one of my favorites, like I said, and this was actually one of the singles that was released today, and it's an incredible track. I love the high notes again that she brings into play with this song, and it's just one of my favorites. I love Borderline. So then we go to the next track, which is called No Tomorrow. I love the electric piano that she brings into this track, along with the synths that come in later. And on this song, she's talking about acting on love and falling in love. And like I said, another one of my favorites on this track. Then we go to the next track, which is called Say Something, which I love the grand piano and the trumpets that come into play on this track. And then we go to the next track, which is called All My Life Part 2, where again it's going off of the spacey sound synths that were in the previous interlude. And again, I enjoyed this one. Then we go to I Am More, which I love the rock um, guitar that's on this track with the piano and synths that come into play. It's like a mixture between R&B and rock, and it has this skittering beat that comes into play. And on this song, she's talking about her self-awareness when it comes to love, and I like this track. The only thing I really wasn't a fan of was when she started to do the rapping towards the end of the track. That's the only thing that I really wasn't a fan of, and she also does that again on the next track, which is called High Heels, with her daughter Soraya. And I like her voice. I like Soraya's voice. And on the song I Am More, I like the high notes as well that she brings into play on this song. Then we get to High Heels on this song. To me, it seemed just a little bit too busy for my taste. I do like the theatrical sense and the clashing beat that come into play with the bass line. Um, and then we go to the next track, which is called Baby Mama with Chance the Rapper. I like the trumpet and the beat of the song. It's one of my favorites off the album. I wasn't really a fan of Chance the Rapper's verse. I feel like she could have did without Chance on the song and it would have been fine. Then we go to All My Life Part 3. I like the build up and the spacey synths that come into play again. And like I said, this is another interlude uh, um, repeating from the previous two. So then we go to Love Again featuring Daniel Caesar. On this track, I like the bass guitar and the drum beat. Then we go to the last track, which is one of my favorites, and it's a very reflective song. I love the lyrics and her vocal performance on this track, which is called Bye Bipolar. I love the grand piano and the key change and the chimes that come into play. This is one of my favorites off the entire album, and this definitely is a song to listen to. And she's talking about mental health, and I just really like this track. It's one of my favorites. And that was the end of the record. Like I said, this record was definitely showing her um, being very personal on this record, very transparent, very reflective. And I recommend you guys go listen to this album. To me, this album is up there as one of her best records to date. Very reflective, very, very good record. My overall rating of the album, I will give the record 9 out of 10. Overall, it was a really good record. I really enjoyed it. It's definitely one of my favorites of the year, and it's something that you definitely should listen to. So I recommend you guys go check it out. Let me guys know what were your favorite songs off the album. Let me guys know what were the tracks that stood out to you. Let me know what were some of the songs that you feel should be released as singles. And I will leave down in the description below on how to purchase the album and how to stream the album. Let's get Brandy to go to #1 on iTunes and all the charts and Billboard 200 and all that stuff. So with that being said, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.